Hi, everybody. So I am here with my dear friend, Erin Ulmer, and we're talking this whole conference about how to love fully and what that means. And we know sometimes love means pain. We open ourselves up for pain and for trials and for forgiveness, the need to receive it and the need to give it. And so I wanted to share some thoughts with you today from Erin's heart to yours surrounding this idea of forgiveness and what it requires. And so, Erin, would you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes. So on May 3rd, 2015, beautiful Sunday, beautiful weather, normal day, normal weekend, and decided to take a little family walk across the Trestle Trail Bridge with my three kids, my husband, John, who was 33 at the time, my daughter, Olivia, who was 11, my son, Ezra, who was 7 at the time, and our daughter, Selah. And in the middle of this bridge, there's a pavilion, a red pavilion. That, as John and I are walking up with the three kids, he um, walked toward this man who was standing next to another man who was laying on his side on a bench. And I knew something was wrong, and I could tell he knew something was wrong. And if you knew John, he would go in and see what was wrong, what was happening, and I kept going, and I had the two girls alongside me, and I got to a certain point when I saw John stopped to approach him, and so I stopped, and when he got up to this man, um, he just said to John, "I don't know what happened. The guy, he just fell over." And 2 seconds later, he pulled out a gun and shot my husband in the chest, shot me in the leg, and then shot my daughter. And at this point, um, I didn't know. You're kind of in another world. You don't exactly, your mind's in one place and your body's in another, and you're like, I don't understand what's happening. But all I knew was that I had to get help and get ourselves out of there. And it still didn't, like, I still couldn't wrap my mind around it. But I grabbed my youngest daughter by the hand and couldn't reach my other daughter, couldn't reach my husband, but I just knew I had to get help. Reality started sinking in a little bit more, and got to my son and said, Ezra, you need to run up and get help, have someone call 911. And John lost his life that day. My daughter Olivia lost her life that day, and this other man named Adam lost his life, and the shooter took his own life. And I almost lost my life that day. But
I've heard your story many times, and every time I hear it, it's this deep hurt that comes back again. And you've been through a lot since then. God has brought you many blessings since then. And you are always the one to remind me that joy and sorrow exist side by side. Joy and sorrow. And that's part of loving people. It's part of living with Jesus, right?
mm-hmm.
But after you lost John and Olivia, a lot of people were telling you that it was okay to be angry,
Mm-hmm.
that you could be angry at God even. What did you say to that? How did you respond?
I've had 5 years now to process this, and I'd say immediately after, when people would tell me that, all I could think was, God saved John, Olivia, and Adam's soul. I mean, there was anger at what happened. I was angry at the shooter, and I never felt angry towards God. And I think when your life is, you know, hanging from a thread, and your life has been, torn apart in so many ways, and I was completely helpless at this point. I was bedridden. I was just physically not able to do anything. I couldn't eat. I didn't eat for a month because one of the bullets went through my intestines. And you realize that, especially like in a time like right now, life feels like it's spinning out of control in everyone's life, and this world feels crazy. But God was that constant then, and He is that constant now. And that's when I understood God's promises and how true they were and are, and I held on to those, and I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have God.
Amen. Tell me more about that. Tell me how God showed himself faithful to you through that trial, through the years since, and tell me how you still believe he has your best interests in mind, even through pain and tragedy. How do you reconcile that?
All the way up until that day, I became a Christian when I was 17, and I went to Bible college. I had, kids. I had my struggles. I, deal with anxiety, and I still felt like within my control, like my husband and my kids. I still could hold on. You feel like you give your life to Christ, and you say that, but when everything's taken away, you realize that everything you have is not yours, and it's his. And when that all happened to us, and to them, it just made me realize that my life was in his hands more than ever. And I knew that. I always knew that, but that just made it a reality. And it's something I always look back at. Every time I go through something now, it's like, but he got me through that. And he, I was completely physically and mentally and spiritually just a broken person, just believing, that, all right, God, you've allowed this. You could have stopped it, but you didn't. And asking yourself the question, but do you still trust him in all that? Are you going to still trust him?
Mm-hmm. And in our very limited understanding, what to the world looks like tragedy is somehow part of God's plan. But you have lived that in ways that other people have not had to live. Have not had to live that. And one of the ways God calls us to serve him and to love him is through forgiveness. So by choosing to stick with God, you also had to subscribe to the idea of forgiveness. How has that played out, in particular related to the shooter?
Even this man who did something so horrible, my heart actually went out to him, thinking, what, his life is over, and I don't know, what happened in those moments before he took his own life, but I deserve just as much as he does. And if anything, my heart went out to his family, and his family actually wrote me a letter, his mom, dad, and his sister, and I had it in an envelope for a year, and actually I've never shared this before, but the week before the 1 year anniversary, I opened it up and I read it, and my heart just broke for his family. And I thought, I need to write them back, and I did not want them to carry this pain because it wasn't their grieving too. And I had so much love and support from the community and friends and family, and I can't imagine what they're going through. And so my heart broke for them, and I didn't want them to live with this burden of feeling like I hold any bitterness toward them. Jesus died for us, and we don't deserve it.
So give me some words of wisdom for any of our sisters out there who are struggling to move past a hurt. This is as serious gets when we talk about the tragedy and hurt. And yet you have chosen to cling to God and move through it. Can you give some words of advice for anyone with us who is standing in a hurt and doesn't know how to move past it?
I think we all struggle with that, but it's just you're reminding, the Bible, what it says is, you need to forgive, and you can understand God's forgiveness towards you. You realize, like, you can extend that forgiveness toward someone else, and forgiveness is a weight that's lifted off.
It's for you and for God as much as it is for the other person. Right. It's less about the other person than it is about clearing your own heart and making sure your relationship with God is open.
If you find it almost impossible, how can you forgive someone that has done you? This man who's done great harm to my life, and tore us apart, and I don't want to live with bitterness in my heart for the rest of my life toward this person. And it's helped me to live harder. And I always say that I've lived harder, I live more, I love more.
I want you to tell us in your own words, what does it mean to love fully? That's our theme. What does that mean to you?
Dying to yourself every day.
I do want to leave our visitors, our friends, with some encouragement on how God has continued to work through your life. Now, we certainly know there's nothing that could ever happen to take away the tragedy that has happened to you. But God has not left you to wallow in it. Tell us what your life looks like now compared to where you were 5 or 6 years ago.
Remarried to my wonderful husband, Steve. I've given my heart and my time to, 6 kids.
You have 6 kids.
6 kids.
6 kids here, one up there. Yes.
7 kids total. But grieving children, they've all had huge loss in their life. And when you first get married, we were talking about this that one time. You marry, this person that you think you know, and then you get married, and you're like, oh, I don't know you that well. Well, for me, it's like I've married 5 people, and it's taken a lot of time. All boys.
You married 5 boys.
And blending 2 families and becoming one. And I can't imagine not having Steve and these 4 boys in our lives now. Like, I can't imagine life without them. And love has expanded and grown, and a lot more dying to myself and a lot more giving of my time.
And you've opened your heart to continue to love. Yep. And God will bless and redeem.
And love truly multiplies. It truly does. So.
Amen. Thank you, dear friend, for sharing your story. And I just want to encourage all of you, if you're walking through something really hard today, know that you are not alone. Jesus is with you first and foremost, and then you have many sisters in Christ who have experienced similar pain. And I want you to allow Erin to serve as an example that although not a single one of us is perfect, God works in and through us. He can heal, He can restore, He can redeem. And when we choose to stick with Him, someday we will see that He's had a purpose for all the pain. And it's worth getting up every day and continuing to walk through it. Yeah. Thank you, friend. Thanks, everybody.